Much better. Welcome to the ultimate low-end flagship phone battle of the year. Today we have the Samsung Galaxy S22, a compact powerhouse with every flagship feature you'd ever want, up against the Google Pixel 6, a completely redesigned phone to give Google its second chance in the ever so crowded phone market. And coming in at just $599, this phone is $200 cheaper than the $799 price tag of the S22. But the question is, can it match up? You see, for the past month or so, I've been trying to decide on which of these two phones to keep for myself, and it's becoming a really hard decision. So today, I'm going to be putting these two phones head to head in a series of categories to see which one is worth your money. And also, big thanks to Casetify for sponsoring this video. Starting with the S22, the first thing you'll notice is how well designed it is. I got mine in phantom white and the phone just looks stunning. This year, they put a glass back on the S22 compared to the plastic on the S21, and it just makes the phone look and feel great, especially with its silky smooth matte finish. Samsung has also started to use flat edges on their phones with a slight bit of curve, and the tough armor aluminum rails feel really smooth in the hand. I also love the silver metallic finish for the camera housing that just melts into the top corner. And best of all, the size of the cameras look like the perfect ratio to the whole phone, and the lenses are all symmetrical with silver rings, which makes them look gorgeous. As for the Pixel 6, Google took a giant step forwards in terms of design. They scrapped the cameras on the upper left and instead slapped on a giant horizontal camera bar that goes completely across the phone, making it look like an Among Us character. Now, I admit, it does look a little weird at first, but the design does grow on you once you get used to it, and it gives the phone a little bit of character. And all of the hardware is built pretty well. There are some minor imperfections, such as being able to feel a bump between the plastic and glass on the camera bar, slightly rougher edges on the frame, and USB-C and speaker holes that aren't censored. And because of these imperfections and that bulky design, the S22 easily takes this point. Looks are only half the story, however, as it's important to see how the phone actually feels. With a 6.1-inch display, the Galaxy S22 can almost be described as a compact flagship, and with flatter edges and only a weight of 167 grams, this phone feels amazingly light and comfortable to hold. On the other hand, the Pixel 6 is 30 grams heavier than the S22, and with a large 6.4-inch screen and a big camera bump, it feels top-heavy in the hand, which does lead to some hand fatigue. The camera bar does actually serve a purpose though by preventing wobble when the phone is on a table, and it also acts as a ledge for your finger to rest on when holding the phone. However, that doesn't remove the fact that the Pixel 6 has got to be the slipperiest phone I've ever used thanks to that glossy glass back. Haptics are another area where Samsung nailed it this year. Instead of the typical Z-axis vibration motor, Samsung used a new X-axis vibration motor, which makes haptics feel much more controlled and precise than ever before. The downside to this is the fact that you can't hear the phone buzz on the table or feel it in your pockets anymore when you get calls or notifications. The haptics on the Pixel 6 are excellent as well, although it does feel ever so slightly more hollow, and with the recent update, the strength of the vibrations went down dramatically, especially for notifications, so you can't hear buzz or feel them, just like the S22. Pretty interesting. Maybe Google is preparing to launch their Pixel Watch soon, but yeah, anyways, Samsung dominates this category once again. And for the last of the hardware section, the display. With the S22, you get a gorgeous 1080p 120Hz 6.1-inch display with perfectly symmetrical slim bezels. The corners are curved perfectly, and there's only a tiny hole punch selfie camera on the top, which maximizes the screen size on this phone. The screen is sharp, vibrant, and punchy. There's no color casting when you tilt the display. It's 120Hz, makes the phone feel buttery smooth, and it also gets extremely bright at up to 1100 nits, especially with their new Vision Booster technology that makes a huge difference in harsh sunlight. I've also noticed that the auto brightness was working really well on this phone, and I didn't have to keep adjusting the brightness, which was great. On the other hand, the 6.4-inch 1080p panel on the Pixel 6 is just average at best. The bezels are quite thick on each side, but at least the colors are vibrant, and 90Hz does feel pretty smooth, although it's not as great as 120Hz. Unfortunately, where this panel really does take a hit is in brightness. It can go up to 800 nits during short bursts, but most of the time it drops down to an average of only 500 nits. It's perfectly fine for indoors and gloomier days outdoors, but once the sunlight starts coming out, you're gonna have a hard time reading the display. And did I mention, the auto brightness is terrible on this phone as I'm constantly battling with it. To pair with these great displays though, both of these phones have great stereo speakers. They both get equally loud despite the size of the S22, and the option to enable Dolby Atmos on the S22 gives it a slight edge in audio immersion. As for unlocking the phones, the S22 uses an ultrasonic fingerprint scanner while the Pixel 6 uses an optical reader. The ultrasonic reader is definitely much better than the optical counterpart, being much quicker, being more secure, and it's even supposed to work if your fingers are dirty or wet. Unfortunately, both the S22 and Pixel 6 fingerprint scanners don't work well with screen protectors in my experience. Luckily, there's Face Unlock on the S22 that the Pixel 6 doesn't have. And now that we're finished talking about hardware, you can see once again that the Pixel 6 is absolutely being slaughtered by the S22, and that is to be expected since they are $200 in price, but a comparison's a comparison, and there will not be any handicaps given. You know what can protect your phones from being slaughtered though? Cases from this video sponsor, Casetify. Remember those old chunky and ugly OtterBox cases people used to get to protect their phones? Well, now you can get the same great protection of Casetify cases while still maintaining a slim profile and looking good. The cases are approved for a drop from 6.6 feet, and to do this, Casetify uses their innovative Chi-Tech dual-layer impact-absorbing material to line the insides and the corners of all cases. These cases are also very eco-friendly as the impact cases are made from 65% recycled and plant-based materials, and their impact crush cases are made from upcycled phone cases. They all ship in 100% compostable packaging, and they use their Defensify antimicrobial coating to eliminate 99% of bacteria growth by preventing the growth of microbes. And they also have a huge range of design options you'll spend hours and hours scrolling through, or you can even customize your own designs and get them printed. And if you're interested in these awesome cases, you can save yourself 15% by using the link in the description below. Go check it out. Alright, back to you, Fenton. Alright, so far the S22 has been dominating the Pixel 6 in every way, but it's still too early to call it as there's still time for a comeback. Let's continue with software. The S22 uses the latest One UI 4, and to be honest, it's still not my cup of tea in terms of how it looks and functions, but I have to say, Samsung has gone a long way to improve their software, and as of right now, it's probably the most functional and stable UI on Android, and that's coming from someone who's hated One UI for years. The software has most of the UI elements pushed down to the bottom half of the screen, making the phone very easy to use with one hand, and everything just looks huge compared to other phones. And with the newly released One UI 4.1, we get a lot of nice improvements like smoother and more refined animations, new Material U color theming, a much nicer and simpler camera UI, and finally a Google Discover page on the home screen. There are still a couple minor complaints I have though, such as notifications being too compact and hard to read, no hotspot toggle on the notification shade, which is annoying, and also no option to search in the app drawer by default. But overall, the S22 has a very solid UI that's only getting better, and you'll have no trouble using it at all. Best of all, Samsung's committing to 4 years of Android updates and 5 years of security updates, which is even longer than Google's Pixel phones themselves. But as good as One UI got, nothing beats the Pixel experience, and now that all the updates have fixed all the bugs, this Pixel is an absolute joy to use. The aesthetic appearance of the whole UI and the Material U theme that forms around the color palette of the wallpaper makes the phone feel more fun and personalized. Animations and general navigation around the UI is also probably the smoothest you'll ever feel, and there are just so many small touches in the UI that really add to the experience, such as a little bobbing effect when you get to the end of content, or the way the black fades in and out from the power button when you click it. The Pixel 6 is also filled with awesome smart features too. Some of my favorite features include call screening, which lets Google Assistant take the call instead and helps you avoid scam calls, different categories in the notification bar, and best of all, the new voice typing. Thanks to the AI improvements in the Tensor chip, Google is able to make transcriptions incredibly fast and accurate and all offline. It can even fix grammar mistakes, do auto punctuation, and even send by voice. For me, it's actually replaced finger typing, especially when my hands are busy, and still blows me away every single time I use it. By far my favorite feature on this phone, and if you can't already tell, the Pixel launcher wins this category for me by far. Another big area of comparison are the cameras, and surprisingly, the Pixel 6 blows away the S22 in the photo department. Google tends to nail photo processing consistently with natural colors and that punchy HDR look we've all come to love. The S22 performs very similarly at first glance with similar color representation and the same great HDR, but there are a couple things it does worse. First, there's this weird yellow-greenish tint with the photos coming from the S22, which does make the image look slightly unflattering. I've also noticed that the S22 had an issue of blowing out highlights during indoor photos, which just completely ruined the image. I'm sure Samsung will fix that in a future update because they do have a good track record for that. What I'm not so sure about is the lack of detail in the photos from the S22. Samsung claims that with this generation, the camera takes one high-resolution 50 megapixel shot for detail and one lower resolution 12 megapixel shot for brightness, and then fuses them together for what Samsung is saying the best of both worlds. However, when zooming into photos, you can clearly see the shocking difference in detail against the Pixel 6. The 50 megapixel mode on the S22 doesn't improve the image by much either, and more often than not, it ruins the image with bad dynamic range and wonky artifacts, especially with the sketchy detail enhancing mode. Now, there are some areas where Samsung does take back the lead, mainly with its telephoto camera, which can zoom into objects that the Pixel can't, a wider ultra-wide lens for more dramatic photos, and a better selfie camera capable of recording 4K video, in which the Pixel is capped at 1080p. I will also have to say that video does look slightly sharper and less noisy compared to the Pixel as well. But considering the fact that most people are taking photos with the main lens most of the time, it's only fair that the Pixel 6 wins this category, unless you're someone who really values video quality. And I know I glossed over many details, but if you want a more in-depth comparison of these two cameras, you can check out my video on that right here. And finally, we get to the biggest and arguably most important category in this whole comparison, battery life. Now here's where the S22 takes a major L because Samsung decided to lower the battery capacity to 3700 mAh compared to 4600 on the Pixel 6, and that just might be the deal breaker for like 80% of you. You see, with such a small battery and power hungry chip like the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1, you would only be getting 3.5, maybe 4 hours of battery life if you're lucky, and that's only if you're using social media apps without any heavy apps. And I absolutely cannot trust this phone to last me through the day, and you're basically forced to bring a power bank and charger with you everywhere you go. There's just been too many times where I've been left without a phone for the rest of the day because it just died. The Pixel 6 on the other hand has greatly improved in battery life with updates, and it's now consistently getting me around 6 hours of screen on time, which is definitely enough to last you through the whole day. Both of these phones don't support any sort of crazy fast charging though, so no advantages for both sides here. And honestly, because the battery life on this phone is so bad, I should just delete all the points it's earned so far. And lastly, price. At $200 cheaper, the Pixel 6 offers exceptional value with great hardware, excellent cameras, and probably the best Android phone experience right now after all the updates. And yes, it doesn't have all the fancy specs of the S22, but all of those aren't necessary to having a good phone experience, and the battery life just takes this phone out the running. I honestly cannot recommend a phone that can't last through the day, and it's expected to get even worse in the long term. And for this reason, I officially crowned the Google Pixel 6 as the winner of this ultimate lower-end flagship phone battle. It was a great battle, and I think what I'm going to do is use the Pixel 6 as my personal phone, and then try to use the S22 as my dedicated content creation phone. And that marks the end of this comparison. If you enjoyed the video and you want to see more, a sub to the channel would be amazing. And to check out the full review of the S22, that video is here. If you want to watch the Pixel 6 review, that video is over here. My name is Fenson, this is Gadgetsu, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.